The Hoop Heads Podcast is brought to you by Head Start Basketball.
Hey Hoopheads! Wanted to take a minute to shout out our partners and friends at Dr. Dish Basketball. Their Dr. Dish shooting machines are undoubtedly the most advanced and user-friendly machines on the market, and they truly accelerate skill development faster than ever. Learn more at drdishbasketball.com and follow their incredible content at Dr. Dish B-Ball on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Mention the Hoopheads Podcast and save an extra $300 on the Dr. Dish Rebel, All-Star, and CT models. Also, make sure to check out the new Dr. Dish Home Machine, which is perfect for these crazy times when gyms and schools are closed. Visit drdishbasketball.com for details. That's a great deal, Hoopheads. Get your Dr. Dish shooting machine today.
Hi, this is Tim Hoyer from 180 Coaching, and you're listening to Hoopheads Podcast.
Prepare like the pros with the all-new Fast Draw and Fast Scout. Fast Draw has been the #1 play diagramming software for coaches for years. You'll quickly see why Fast Model Sports has the most compelling and intuitive basketball software out there. For a limited time, Fast Model is offering new subscribers 10% off Fast Draw and Fast Scout. Just use the code SAVE10 at checkout to grab your discount, and you'll be on your way to more efficient game prep and improved communication with your team. Fast Model also has new coaching content every week on its blog, plus play and drill diagrams on its play bank. Check out the links in the show notes for more. Fast Model Sports is the best in basketball.
If you're not comfortable and you don't welcome failure, you're going to have problems getting to the highest level because you have to fail a lot in order to master any craft.
Crystal Robinson is a former WNBA player and coach. While attending Atoka High School in Oklahoma, she was named an All-American by the Women's Basketball Coaches Association. She attended Southeastern Oklahoma State University, where she averaged 26.9 points per game, 10.4 rebounds per game, and 6 assists per game, making her the all-time Southeastern leader in points, rebounds, and assists. In both 1995 and 96, she was named the NAIA Women's Basketball National Tournament MVP. She has been inducted into both the Oklahoma Sports Hall of Fame and the NAIA Hall of Fame. She began her professional career playing for the Colorado Xplosion in the ABL, which earned her a Rookie of the Year award and an ABL All-Star. When the ABL folded, she was drafted 6th overall in the WNBA by the New York Liberty. Robinson averaged 10 points a game, 2 rebounds per game, and 1 steal over 30 minutes per game during her 8-year WNBA career. In 2007, she announced her retirement to begin her career as a coach. She has been a coach for the Washington Mystics, Mcalester High School, Murray State College, and Atoka High School, among others. She was most recently an assistant coach for the WNBA's Dallas Wings. Crystal is also the author of a new book, Finding Myself, that shares her life journey and inspires others to learn from her experiences. If you're looking to improve your coaching, please consider joining the Hoopheads Mentorship Program. We believe that having a mentor is the best way to maximize your potential and become a transformational coach. By matching you up with one of our experienced mentors, you'll develop a one-on-one relationship that will help your coaching, your team, your program, and your mindset. The Hoopheads Mentorship Program delivers mentoring services to basketball coaches at all levels through our team of experienced head coaches. Find out more at hoopheadspod.com or shoot me an email directly, mike@hoopheadspod.com. Our roster of shows is growing, so don't forget to check out all our other podcasts on the Hoopheads Pod Network, including Thrive with Trevor Huffman, Beyond the Ball, the CoachMaze.com podcast, Players Court, Bleachers and Boards, The Green Light, Courtside Culture, and our team-focused NBA podcasts, Cavalier Central, Nuck If You Buck, 305 Culture, #Lakers, Motor City Hoops, X's and O's NBA Breakdown, Spanning the Spurs, LA Hoops, The Wizards Hoops Analyst, and At the Buzzer. We're looking for more NBA podcasters interested in hosting their own show centered on a particular team. Email us info@hoopheadspod.com if you're interested in learning more and bringing your talent to our network. Take some notes as you listen to this episode with former WNBA player and coach, Crystal Robinson. Hello and welcome to the Hoopheads Podcast. It's Mike Klinzing here with my co-host Jason Sunkel. And tonight we are pleased to welcome to the podcast former WNBA player and coach and author of a new book, Finding Myself, Crystal Robinson. Welcome to the Hoopheads Podcast.
Thanks. I'm excited to be here, extremely excited to be here. I can't wait to talk a little basketball and sports with you.
Absolutely. It's going to be a lot of fun. We are looking forward to digging into all of the things that you've been able to do with the game of basketball at many, many different levels. So it's going to be fun to be able to talk to you and kind of get your perspective on how those levels were different from a coaching perspective, what your experience was like as a player at the different levels that you were able to play at. So there's a lot here for us to dig into. I want to start, Crystal, by going back in time to when you were a kid. Tell us a little bit about how you got into the game of basketball when you were younger.
Well, I think I was fortunate. Both of my parents were really good basketball players. My mom actually won 2 national championships at Murray State Junior College, and that's where my parents met at. And my dad played at Murray State Junior College and then went on to Kansas State. So I think when I turned about 4 or 5 years old, my dad bought me a Nerf basketball goal, and it was a love affair that still hasn't ended. I think I tore that goal up and we duct taped it back together more than probably most, but that's how I got started in basketball.
Was it just simply the fact that it was the exposure from your parents and you were obviously around the game from a young age because they were into the game? What do you remember about your own? What did you love about basketball? Was it your parents doing it, or was there some particular aspect of it that really appealed to you when you were younger?
Yeah. Well, several reasons I loved it. My dad played with me a little bit, but I never experienced or saw my mom play. I mean, she didn't even play basketball anymore by the time I started, but my dad actually went to the gym and played with us a lot. But I actually had a cousin named Kevin Washington that played at Stringtown, and my only goal in life was to beat him. He was the best. Like, I looked up to him so much, and every time we got into a street game, I would always make sure I was pitted against him. Eventually, I got to the point to where I could beat him, and then that's when I knew that I was probably pretty good. So that's kind of how I really got started and developed a love for basketball. And then the other thing was I just grew up in such a tumultuous environment that basketball was my release and my way out. I literally took all of my anguish and my frustrations out on the person across to me, just playing as hard as I could possibly play.
All right, so talk a little bit about that situation that you grew up in to give us a little bit of context in terms of what you experienced as a young kid growing up, and then how that played into what you just described of you kind of pouring your energy and anger into the game of basketball.
Yeah, well, you have to really, in my book, I talk about it a lot more in depth, but just, I grew up with 2 alcoholic parents, and I had 4 siblings, 3 of them were younger than me. I grew up, helping take care of them and picking up cans on the side of the road. And, we grew up in a very poor situation. But, at that time, I can't even tell you that we knew we were poor. We were very, very happy kids. We were happy with the things that we had. We really didn't know any better. We had not a lot of exposure to the outside world. We had Channel 10 and Channel 12. We got to watch some football sometimes, and we got to watch some basketball sometimes, but we spent most of our time outside. None of us really had bikes because we would take our rims off our bikes and knock all the spokes out and nail it to a telephone pole, and that's what we grew up playing on. And when somebody broke one, we would just go to the next bike. So just a huge love for basketball. When I started loving it as a child, I took a basketball with me everywhere that I can remember going after that.
Did you play a lot with your siblings mostly when you were first starting out, when you were really young?
I played a lot with my cousins. There's a bunch of guy cousins, like Stacy Washington played it. Most of my cousins played at Stringtown, though, because I grew up in Stringtown. I actually went to high school in Atoka, but the head coach there played college basketball with my dad. But I grew up in Stringtown watching Terry Green and UL Washington's one of my cousins in pro baseball.
The toothpick.
Yeah, the toothpick. Yeah, that's something that he's my cousin. And So I grew up playing baseball on the boys team. We'll talk about other sports like, the girl that I was doing that in the 80s. Started at, pitched and shortstop and third base on Little League baseball team. So I was actually probably better at baseball. Just, I was a girl. Like I never hardly struck out, and I played baseball in high school till I was a senior and started at second base.
That's awesome. I'm always fascinated by high-level female athletes and just kind of this start that you get in sports, because in a lot of times it's difficult, I think, to find other females that have the same level of passion and desire for that sport, especially at those younger ages. And I think it's probably better now than it was. I'm sure, in the era when you grew up, you and I are close to the same age, that there just wasn't the same opportunities, at least on an organized fashion, for girls to be able to play, whether it was baseball or basketball or whatever sport it was.
There was. You just had to be very fortunate. Like I grew up playing AAU, but I lived in Visay, Oklahoma, which is like in the middle of nowhere with one of the guys who owned the team, him and his wife, and I helped on their puppy farm. And then, I had a lot of help. A lot of great people helped me, but I did get to travel and play. But back then, this summer ball was for the elite. Only the elite people played. But now it's such a big business. Like, if you want a team and you got the money to do it, you probably can get some people to pay you to take them to tournaments. So it's just a little bit different from, how it was now. It's such a well-oiled money machine. But I think, because Nike with the EYBL and Adidas, those guys got into it, and it's just really changed the landscape of basketball, especially on the men's side. But, colleges don't really even recruit high school basketball anymore. They do after they see you in summer league. So it's just, things have changed a lot. So
yeah, there's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
And I think that we've had this discussion on the podcast all the time, just about the positives and negatives of each of those two systems. And you think about, as you said, when you were playing AAU basketball, there might have been one or two teams, if you're talking about a big city. I grew up here in Cleveland, and there was maybe two AAU teams in the whole city, made up of, the best players from across the area. And now, of course, there's two teams from every neighborhood, it seems like, let alone let alone a city. So how did you get connected, kind of being out in the middle of nowhere? How did you get connected with that team? How did they find you? How did they discover you? Or how did you get connected to them?
Well, just some of the girls that I played against in high school. I had a good friend named Jayana Williams who played at Jinx, and her parents just happened to own an oil company, and they financed everything that we did for our team. And I either spent my time with Jayana or with Cheryl White in Visay in the summers. Like literally, I've been staying away from my mom and my family probably since, I don't know, my 8th grade year. I didn't spend a lot of time with my family. I just chased the basketball dream. I would go, actually my 8th grade year, I moved to Louisiana to live with my grandmother so I could play 5-on-5. I was tired of playing 6-on-6 because I grew up playing 6-on-6.
Okay, so we're going to talk about that. We got to talk about that in a second. Keep going.
Yeah. So I grew up playing, so I moved there my 8th grade year to play 5-on-5. And when I came back, my mom said she missed me too much and made me come back the next year. And I could go to any school I wanted because I wasn't in a district. And I ended up going to Atoka because my dad knew Phil Daniel, who recently just passed away, my high school coach. And I ended up he helped me so much blossom as a player. Just really taught me how to think the game and how to use my skill set, and really preached a lot to me about not just being a great athlete and relying on your athletic ability. Learn how to outthink people. So.
What did that look like? And then I want to come back to the 6-on-6. But what did that look like when he's trying to get you to develop and utilize more than just your physical tools, but to actually think the game? How's he going about helping you to do that?
Well, really, he just kind of implemented things. Like my freshman year, all I did was post up. My sophomore year, and freshman summer, we worked on my mid-range game. So my sophomore year, I posted up and used the mid-range game. Then my sophomore summer to my junior year, we worked on the three-point shot a lot. Then he progressed me. I never tried to do too much too fast. Like I really mastered my crafts before I moved on. And then overall, by the time I was a senior, everything kind of came together. Plus, we spent a lot of time watching film. And he was just really good about explaining to you. And I'm very quizzical. I think Richie Adubato told me in the pros, he was like, you think like a coach, he said, you're going to be a great basketball player, but you'll never be Kobe, or you'll never be one of those guys because you think like a coach. You don't take bad shots. You don't take the risk that great players take, because in your mind, you think like from a coach's standpoint. Statistically, that's a bad shot. So I was a very efficient player. I didn't make mistakes, and I had a very great career. But he was right. Richie was right about that. I would rather take 6 shots and make them all than to take 17 and be 6 and 17.
It's funny how everybody's mentality is different, isn't it? The way you approach the game and the way you think it's so different. And it makes for, again, it's what makes the game so great, is there's within the confines of the court, there's so many different ways that as a player or as a coach that you can approach the game. And I think that's one of the things that makes it the most exciting.
I think something that you just said is something great that I think coaches, young coaches and kids all should hear. I think that people get so caught up in the comparisons of players, like who's better, Kobe or Mike, in comparison. And just, I think when players focus on being just the best player that they could possibly be, that's when you're at your best, right? I'm not saying that you don't take your game and you don't mold it after people, but I mean, I was considered a dead-eye shooter. Now, I could do other things, but I'm tell you what, I made sure that what I was hired to do, that I was top notch at that. I made over 86% of the last second shots that I took in my career. I think I'm number 3 all time in efficiency rating in WNBA. And I'm the statistics guy has me in the book and my stats. So it was just more, I felt good after games when I was efficient. If I could score 30 and have to take 17 shots and shot a bad percentage, I didn't feel good about that. So
yeah, it's so interesting just the way, again, that different players think about it and approach it. And that's a really, I think, an unusual way of looking at things. I think a lot of people are just happy. Hey, I look at especially when we're younger, people look at that scoring total, and that really, in a lot of cases, is what matters to them. And you hit on, I think, one of the biggest challenges that we have in youth basketball and in high school basketball, and probably even in college basketball at this point, is because we now have such accessibility to what everyone else is doing. There's so much comparison and there's so much chasing of the next thing, whatever that next thing might be. So I've given the example of, like, you have the kid who's in elementary school who just can't wait until they get to be in 8th grade so they can play on the 8th grade team or get on this AAU team. And then they're in 8th grade and they can't wait until they can be a varsity starter. And if they're not a varsity starter when they're in 9th grade, they're disappointed or they're mad or they're transferring schools. And then the kid who's playing in high school, which should be one of the best times of your life and one of the most enjoyable basketball periods in your entire career, people are so focused on that scholarship that they're waiting to try to get at the end of the high school journey that they're not enjoying where they are. And I think that comparison, and because we can see everything that everybody does, it makes it really, really tough on kids and on their families, parents, and then consequently everybody has more pressure on them. And sometimes I wonder whether a lot of kids enjoy the game as much as maybe someone who grew up the way you did or grew up the way I did, where we didn't have all that. I didn't have all that external pressure. I put internal pressure on myself to try to be better, but I didn't have people from other communities or halfway across the world comparing themselves to me or commenting on what I was doing. And it's just, I think it's an interesting dynamic, the way basketball has shifted.
Yeah. Well, for me, I think that something that also plays a big role in that is coaches and how coaches coach players up. Do you make a big deal of the defensive stopper and how he takes charges and what does your culture value? To me, culture is everything. And that's something that I think is hard for kids to transfer from from AAU to college, because when you go from EYBL or MAYB into college, you're going into a pretty set culture that you have to figure out how to fit your tools and your skills into. The EYBL is a free-for-all. Like it just teaches players that go out and score as many points as you can, and then coaches don't teach the game. They're thinking about winning and losing. They'll press the whole game. But how is that helping the kids' basketball IQ? So to me, when parents are picking these teams for their kids, it really, I don't know if they place enough emphasis on what kind of culture does this organization have and what are they fostering in my children. Everybody wants to see success, but success comes in a lot of different ways, and there's so many skills you can build, whether you are the best player on the team or the worst player on the team. And for me, the culture is something like a Dennis Rodman. I mean, who really wants to go get 30 rebounds a game? That's a lot of freaking work. But he was very valued for doing that. Meta world peace. I could just, almost every team, championship team has one. Draymond Green. I could just go down, the list goes on and on. Bruce Bowen was a defensive stopper and just a tough-nosed person. But those players are unbelievably valuable. But it's up to us as coaches, because I've coached 3rd and 4th grade, and I became the best coach I think I possibly could be in the 3rd and 4th and 5th grade, because you have to get your point across without anger. You have to problem solve and teach them how to, because they're looking to you and they're going to react how you react. And it teaches you. I think every coach should have to coach 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, because you can't yell and act crazy or you're never going to get anything accomplished.
There's no question about that. I've probably spent, honestly, the majority of the coaching that I've done has probably been at those grade levels, because I've been running camp for elementary school kids for 29 some years. And I really enjoy working with that age. And you're right, 100%, that you have to be able to explain things in a very simple way to get them to be able to understand it. And you yelling at them is not really going to help your cause. If your goal is to try to get them to play better, or even if your goal is simply to win, yelling is not really going to help them. And as you know, and I'm sure a lot of our audience knows, when you go out there into the youth basketball space today and you go to an AAU tournament and you're watching 3rd or 4th grade girls or 3rd and 4th grade boys play, and you have how many teams that sit in a 2-3 zone, and how many coaches do you see stomping their way up and down the sideline and yelling? And there's far too many. We have lots and lots of great coaches at those age levels, but we also have a lot of people that could benefit from some coach education and some listening to a podcast or reading a book or getting with somebody who has more experience to help them to understand just what you said, which is, look, you have to be able to teach the game, and you have to be able to do it in such a way that you teach with empathy and understanding for the age group of the children that you're working with. And I think if we could figure that piece of it out, we could end up, the game would be a lot better. And I don't mean the game that we're going to develop those kids into NBA players or WNBA players, but what we're talking about is just making sure that the game is a positive experience for all those kids. And I think a lot of times the game isn't always a positive experience, and it's not just basketball. I mean, I think a coach can very quickly damage a kid's relationship with sports. And it sounds like you were very, very fortunate as a young girl to be able to have people who were a positive influence in your life, especially since your parents, the struggles that you had at home.
Well, hindsight is definitely your friend, I guess you could say, because no, I absolutely detested. My dad was so hard on me. Like, I could score 47 points and he would say, "What about the 2 shots you missed?" Like, It was like I could never please him. As a young kid, it hurt me, but it kind of turned me into a perfectionist and helped me as a professional athlete, because after every game, I never took too long to feel good about that game. I looked at my stats, I studied what I could do better, and I moved on to the next game, like to be prepared for the next game. But I went through lots of phases with my father where I just never thought I could ever do anything that would make him excited. But he spent all his time bragging about me to his friends. To me, he never actually let me be comfortable with that, and that's just, I think that I was a psycho when I first went into coaching. Like, I yelled. I think I lost my voice and damaged my lungs and a whole bunch of stuff. Just because I think when you're a young coach and you want to win so bad and you're used to doing it yourself and you can't understand why we've done over this a million times, why can't you get this? You are ill prepared. I think ill preparedness causes you to coach with anxiety. And, I just learned over the years of coaching that during the game is problem-solving time. And I've just evolved over my coaching career that doing practice, if I'm going to yell, it's going to be in practice. But during the game is problem-solving time, and I don't have time to tear them down. Like at that point in time, I have to allow my assistants, if there's something going on, I say something to them, and then they will do it. Because I found that when you're mad as a head coach, you miss things. If you're spending time griping about something that happened 3 plays ago, you're missing calls or you're missing things that you need to be involved in. And I think that just goes to the trust factor you have with your assistant coaches and letting them help you a lot. So
absolutely. And I think there is what you talked about when you transition from being a player to being a coach. I think there's a huge adjustment to be made there, because playing where you have at least some degree of control, and especially if you've always been one of the better players on your team, you have some degree of control over what goes on the floor. And then suddenly you're a coach, and during the game, you, as we all know, you have some control over some of the things, but ultimately the players have more control. And as you said, you do your coaching during practice, and you get your team prepared, and you do all the things that are required. But then when that game time comes, it's a little bit tough to be able to stand on the sideline and know that, ooh, this is now out of my hands. I've put the outcome of this game in my players' hands. And I think there's a growth process that goes along with that.
Agreed.
As a coach, and it's tough. It's a difficult adjustment, I think, for players to become coaches, especially if they haven't kind of gone through, especially when you see like somebody who's been a professional player and then they get their first job. Like I can't even imagine Steve Nash this year with the Nets goes from, he's never coached before, and obviously incredibly intelligent player and a guy who thinks the game and is very intellectual and super talented and all those things. But I just know that when you haven't actually coached and now suddenly you go and you're coaching, and especially as the head coach, that the learning curve there has to be really, really steep.
Yeah. Well, for me, I think that, and I think fans and parents, and I just say parents because I've coached at so many levels, most people don't understand that X's and O's are a small part of coaching. Like, it's important, but even as a head coach, I can hire some assistant coaches that are way better at that than me. If you are not good at the psychology of it, especially when you start getting at higher levels of basketball, when I say psychology of it, I mean convincing players to get along, convincing players to give up shots, convincing players to do what's best for the betterment of the team, convincing players to be, to follow the culture, especially when you have outside influences saying, hey, you should be scoring this many points. You're not getting enough shots. Like there's so many factors that go in to building a complete team that I think, everybody thinks they can sit in that chair and just do the X's and O's and say, oh, I can do a better job than that coach. But most of those people have no idea the psychology that it takes to actually get the players to do all the things you want them to do anyway. So,
absolutely.
Come and try, sir, ma'am. Please show me how it's done. I've only been doing this for 30 years. Please.
I know. It's funny. It's basketball coaching. I forget where I read this, but basketball coaching is one of the only professions where people can sit in the stands and have absolutely no experience and think they can do the job better than somebody who's done it for 30 years. And nobody goes in and sits outside the surgery room and screams at the surgeon that, hey, I can do that better.
I'm going to tell you a funny story real fast. I know it's a lady. She's one of the best coaches in Oklahoma. Her name's Rhonda Fields, and she's coached at Jinx for a very long time. She's not there anymore, but she told me she had this lawyer, a lawyer that was a parent that was just giving her a hard time, and he would just gripe and complain all the time, and he was constantly telling her how to do her job. So she said one day she just showed up at his office and started rearranging the office and moving stuff and just walked in his office and sat down like she was getting ready to have a meeting with him. And he said, like, what's going on? What are you doing? And why are you doing this? And she said, well, since you come up to the gym and tell me how to do my job, I thought I'd come up there and see how much you appreciated me trying to tell you how to do yours. And I just thought that was really, really funny. So
that's good stuff. Yeah. I mean, I think that when you frame it that way, and I think that, look, we know that there are some, I'm just going to use the term crazy, which is maybe not the right term, but we all know that there are some crazy parents, crazy fans that are in the stands that maybe truly believe, and even if you got them in a moment away from the game, that they would still truly believe that they knew more than the coach, or that they could do the job better, or that the coach doesn't know what they're doing. But most people just, I think, especially parents, tend to get caught up in the moment and the emotion of this is what's going to happen. They start yelling. And if you got them away from the game or you gave them a little bit of perspective, they would realize and they would probably admit that they don't know more than the coach. And I do think that having a child and watching a child play a sport, and again, whatever sport it is incredibly emotional. And you have to, I think, be able to realize and understand that it's not about you as the parent. It's about the child's journey through the game of basketball or whatever sport, or whether it's music or whatever. It's about the child. And I think that's a challenge. And I know I've faced that challenge with my own kids. And I think back when you were telling your story there about your dad and how he pushed you, and he didn't say the nice things that he was saying to all his friends. He was never saying that to you. He was pushing you. And I'm curious to get your take on that, as kind of looking back from a child's perspective, but now seeing it as an adult. Hey, hoopheads, we all hate ankle sprains, and they happen way too often. Ankle injuries are the #1 sports-related injury. Arise is trying to change that. With the iFast, your athletes get preventative protection and full mobility. Athletes no longer need to wear bulky braces that limit performance and give mediocre protection. Anyone playing sports should be using these products. Keep your athletes in the game. Don't wait for them to get hurt to take action. Visit www.arise.com, spelled ARYSE, and use the code HOOPHEADS to get 20% off the future of performance. That's ARYSE.com with promo code HOOPHEADS to get 20% off. If you had it to do over again and you could have any kind of relationship in terms of basketball with your dad, would you have wanted him to do it the same way? In other words, the results of what happened again, it wasn't obviously only your dad who was responsible for your success, but ultimately you ended up having a tremendous amount of success in the game. So I'm curious about, just when you look back on it, are you grateful? Are you resentful? Is there a little bit of both in there because you wished he would have been kinder to you or shared some of that feeling that he had, that he shared with his friends? Just how do you look back and reflect upon that relationship, both father-daughter and within the basketball framework, if my question makes any sense at all?
Yeah, it makes great sense. I don't look back on it. There's no resentment for it. I think that without it, I think that my dad never wanted me to settle. He never wanted me to get comfortable. He never wanted me to look in the mirror and say, "Oh, you're so great," that you get comfortable with that. That there's always, you can have a great day, but all that day is over, and there's always a battle to fight the next day. What are you going to do to stay on top of your game? What are you going to do? Like, I wouldn't go back and change it at all. It kind of programmed me in a way, and at that time, as a kid, yeah, you want your dad to just say, "Oh, you're awesome," but I'm very thankful for how he handled it. And I just happen to think also too, in hindsight, I just think that it's hard to do, but I think that we coddle our kids too much. Life's not easy. We both know that. Even if you have money, there's going to be lots of problems. And I think that what my childhood did teach me was how to deal with problems and how to problem solve. And I think that's a skill that you develop, just like dribbling a basketball. You practice it every day. If you put in adverse situations, you have to figure out ways out of them. And you don't figure out ways out of them and not get to the success that I got without making pretty good decisions. So, there's not anything I would go back and change, honestly, to tell you the truth. I think that I've had a very blessed life. And I think that everything that's happened to me has been to prepare me for moments like this. I wouldn't have anything to talk to you about at all without it. So
understood. What advice would you have for parents of, let's just say, a high school athlete? So you have a high school athlete who aspires to be a college basketball player. What advice would you have for that parent in terms of handling the relationship with their child, or things that they can do as a parent to help facilitate their child's dream and yet not sabotage it with some of the behaviors that we sometimes see with parents. So what advice would you have for the parent of a high school basketball player?
I would tell them to be honest with yourselves and be honest with your kid. There'd be a couple of things I would tell them. And I trained kids for a little bit, but it wasn't really for me. I think that so many parents pay people who say, I can make your kid a D1 player. Your kid's skill level is what's going to make him a D1 player. And unfortunately, some of us are tapped out. There's no shame. And what I'm trying to say is there's no shame in knowing that your kid's going to go D2, NAIA, JUCO. Like, as long as they're getting that scholarship and they're getting to carry on their dream, quit placing so much great emphasis on them being D1. I think lots of parents get robbed blind because there's not a trainer alive that can force or talk a college coach into taking a player that's not that caliber of player. There's no shame. I could have went to any college in the country, and I went to Southeastern Oklahoma State, which is an NAIA school. I played tennis and basketball there. I had a great college experience because I got to be an athlete. It wasn't the same pressures as D1, but I still accomplished the same goal. But I had a tremendous amount of talent. Everybody can't do that. So that would be one thing that I would tell them. And I would also tell them to invest some time into and understanding and who you put your kid on a travel ball team with. Don't just go with people who make these promises to you. Evaluate your kid's skill set and understand and know they're going to learn a lot more than basketball. Like, the things that you learn in basketball, you take into the workspace with you. You have to learn how to get along. You have to learn how to do teamwork. You have to be around people who you don't like, and you still have to have some emotional intelligence. It's just so many things that sports can teach you that, a college scholarship is great, but be happy with what your kids are getting and be honest with the level that you're going to get to it. And it'll keep you from having so many arguments and problems with trainers and coaches, because lots of parents have empty arguments because they just really have a very, what's the best word I'm looking for? They don't have a very good.
They have an unrealistic picture of what their kid is,
of what their kid's talent is. So.
Absolutely, and I think that that's something that, as a parent, you have to. I mean, I've seen it. So my son right now is a freshman in high school, and he played on the freshman team, and I have a pretty good idea, I think, and understanding of who he is and what he is as a player. But we've played with the same sort of group of kids kind of growing up, and it's just interesting to watch and see how each of those kids develop in different ways. And you look at parents on teams and just kids that you've seen and people who have this opinion or that opinion. And I think that what you said is 100% correct, that most of the time when you see a kid who's having a good experience, you see a parent who has a realistic understanding of what their kid is, who their kid is, what their talent level is. And then I think the second piece of it that you hit on that's really important is, especially in the way that the basketball system is set up today, and you can put this in high school and you can also put it in AAU, where especially if the kid is a good player, that AAU coach or that high school coach, or even take it one step further, that trainer may not want to tell that kid the truth about what the holes are in their game or what level they can really play at. Because if I'm the high school coach, I tell a kid that they're apt to transfer. If I'm an AAU coach, that kid may take their money and go play on some other AAU team. And if I'm a trainer, look, we all know that there's 25 people within a 1 mile radius that have hung out a shingle as a trainer. And so they can just go to somebody else. And I think that ability to tell the truth, the best coaches, and I don't care what level it is, I don't care if you're coaching third grade or you're coaching in the pros, coaches who can tell their players the truth about where they are as players and what they need to improve on and what they're good at and all those things, I think that really is what leads to success. If you don't have somebody who's willing to tell you the truth, that's when you get in a lot of trouble very quickly.
Yeah, well, I don't want to sit here and sound like, you've touched on like I have a nephew. I have a nephew named Jackson that reclassified as an 11th grader, and he's a freshman at Texas A&M. I've been training him for as long as I can remember. And I'm a horrible fan. Like, I almost hate to go to his games. And it's not because I'm a horrible fan toward the other people. Just I have a horrible ability. I can't watch basketball and enjoy it. Like, I see the holes. I see what he should be doing better. Like, I would like to enjoy watching him play, but him being successful is a big part of me enjoying watching him play. Like, and getting him to understand that, yeah, you love basketball and you want to be at a high level, but you're kin to me. We have the same last name. There's going to be expectations, unrealistic expectations put on you that you're going to have to be tough enough to play through. So literally, he doesn't have any sisters and brothers. So I actually coached him for 3 summers, and just to be mean to him and make him cry, literally, because he needed to toughen up. But you're just exactly right. I agree with you everything that you said.
When you start thinking about parents and players, and one of the things you mentioned was making sure that you get with the right type of coach and the right person who's going to develop not just the basketball player, but also the person. So if you were, again, talking to a parent of a basketball player, and pick out whatever level you want, but I'm thinking obviously kids who are still in high school or below, how do those people go about choosing a good coach or a good AAU program to play in? What should they be looking for? So if they have a chance and they go to tryouts, or they get a chance to meet the coach or the AAU director and ask them questions, what are some things that they should look for in a coach or a program in your mind that can best help develop their kid?
One of the first things I'd like to tell them, because so many parents are like, well, little Johnny got invited to this USA basketball or whatever, something, but it costs $990. Like, that doesn't mean your kid is being recruited. That means they want you to pay them some money for something. And I think so many parents, like, they get caught up in these different levels, but I think I would tell them that I would be looking for people. Like, first of all, it's hard to find a great program if you don't know the level of who your player is. So just using Jackson as an example, Jackson played for Team Griffin. They won the Peachtree Jam, which is a really, really big deal. But he was that level caliber of player. Now, I have another cousin that plays for another organization. He plays for PWP, which, not that they're not a great organization, but they're probably a little step under. They're MAYB, and they pay for everything for their players as well, but they still don't have the notoriety and the clout of the Peachtree Jam and the Nike contract and all that stuff. And that's just a whole nother business that you don't know about until you are in the heat of your son or being recruited, because Nike pays guys that basically all they do is hang around basketball tournaments and get to know these kids and encourage them to go to a Nike school so that Nike can sign them when they get out. Like, it's crazy on the inside,
it really
the way
is.
the business goes. But yeah, I would tell them, know your players so you can find the right organization for them. Sports is good. Maybe your kid is not that great of a basketball player, but he needs the ability to be around other kids, develop these. You got to find teams that want to build character, teams that just fit the needs of what you want. And I would ask questions. Don't just be like, oh, that's a winning organization, I want my kid on that team. I need to know, does my kid fit? Because there's competition. And if your child plays, there's some parents that are ruthless.
Yep.
Excuse me. And when you come into a new team with a player that's pretty good, you better really be good, because they're probably going to make your life hard for at least a week or two. So, or there's not going to be enough basketballs to go around. Team Griffin, like, we're not the kind of people that complain. Like, Jackson was number 2 shooter in the country and he got 6 shots a game. Then there's another player that was ranked ahead of him in our state, but has not even gotten any major D1 offers, but he's ranked ahead of Jackson in our state, and he shoots the ball 30 times a game. So, but we never complained. But his parents was always complaining. So then they move a kid from Wichita, the best player in Wichita, to the team, and he's taking 30 shots. So we were getting ready to probably exit, but we didn't cause no problems or complain. It's just at that point in time, it wasn't conducive to Jackson and what he's trying to do for his future.
Yeah, it's amazing just when you start looking at that level and trying to figure out and navigate it. And I think one of the things that's always a challenge is, especially for people, so you think about yourself and your experiences in the game as both a coach and a player, and you have an idea at least of what it takes to be able to navigate that world. But for so many parents, it's their first time and probably only time through the system. And I think that's where, and it doesn't even have to be at that elite level. I mean, you could talk about just the average AAU player who might end up being on a varsity team when they get older. Even those people have difficulty navigating and making good choices and understanding what the system is and what it looks like. And I think one of the biggest challenges that we have in the game of basketball is educating parents and players about what we just talked about, which is what should you look for and how do you go about choosing a good program and what does that look like? And I think one of the things that people judge it on, and you said it, is that team's winning or that organization is winning. And so that's where we want to be. And that's not all, I mean, that's not to say that winning organizations can't be good organizations, because obviously those two things go hand in hand. But if that's the only thing you're judging it by, you can get in trouble very quickly. And I love what you said about go and ask people questions. And I think if you ask questions, you have conversations with whether it's the person who's going to be the coach of that team or whether it's the director of the AAU club, I think you're going to get a pretty good feel pretty quickly about what that coach or that AAU program is all about.
Better than that, just go sit in the stands of one of their games and listen to the parents. Is that where you want your kid to be? Like,
right. True.
That's going to be your kid out there they're talking about.
Yep, absolutely.
Better than that, to me, that's the culture. That's the important thing. And if the culture stinks, then the kids are going to be unhappy. And I just don't know that most parents realize how much a part of the culture that is, because like something that I really valued about what Texas A&M, something that they do, they call my sister once or twice a month and they'll tell her like, hey, we're getting ready to ramp up workouts. We're about to be really hard on Jackson. He's probably going to have some difficulties. So when he calls home, you know what's going on so you can motivate him and encourage him. Instead of most parents, you know, when your kid comes home complaining about not getting to play, most parents don't have it in them and say, well, are you working as hard as you possibly can? Maybe you need to work a little bit harder. They usually go to, well, they start unconditionally don't understand you're teaching your kid to make excuses right from the jump. Right. There's a reason why your kid isn't playing, because I don't know one coach in the country that does not want to win. Like, I'm not playing my favorite people. I'm playing the people that's going to win.
Right, absolutely.
You know, and if your kid's not playing, he's not playing for a reason. And most parents don't understand that. But that doesn't mean that your kid, and then just learning to wait your turn. And that's something that I think that I get hired in the WNBA for that, for the way I deal with players and the way I keep problems out of the locker room, as more so than probably X's and O's. Because when you get people complaining to you about their playing time, and I tell players this all the time, while you're over here complaining and pouting, you're going to miss that opportunity when it shows up. And then you're going to be out the league, and then somebody else is going to have your job that wants this opportunity. So I don't really massage players and sit around and let them feel sorry or guilty for themselves. No, you're a professional athlete. You have to wait your turn. Now, you played 7 minutes in the game last night, and you took 4 open shots, and you didn't make one. So what do you want? How much more can I fight for you? You have to be prepared for opportunities. That's what it basically comes down to. And you can't be prepared if you're upset and you're mad and you have all these ill feelings. You're going to lay a goose egg when that opportunity comes.
How receptive are players to that conversation? Obviously, it varies, and each individual player is going to be receptive in different ways. But when you sit down and you're having that conversation, I would guess that clearly players who have gotten to the WNBA level are mentally tough. They're better than 99.9% of the basketball players in the world. So they obviously have that inside them. But when you approach them with that idea of, hey, you gotta you got to put this aside and you got to keep working even if things aren't going exactly the way you want them to. How do they respond to that?
Well, that you're making a great point right there, because first let me say that's a part of what we just talked about earlier. Wanting your kids, everything to go your kids' way. Learning to deal with failure is a major key in becoming the best possible athlete you can possibly be. Because if you're dribbling the ball and you dribble it off your foot every time, if you can't deal with the failure of fixing that, you're not going to get better. You're not going to be able to take it through your legs. You're constantly failing to grow as a professional athlete or as an athlete, because you have to teach yourself so many things and how to do so many things. So if you're not comfortable and you don't welcome failure, you're going to have problems getting to the highest level, because you have to fail a lot in order to master any craft, whether it's acting, whether it's whatever. You're going to fail a lot to get there, and you have to be tough enough to not give up during that failure. And then that's what it boils down to.
Yeah, it's so interesting that you think that, okay, you get to the highest level of the game, and that you still at that point have players dealing with a lot of the same ideas, issues, things that you see in middle school basketball, just being played out at a much more public and much higher level of skill. But still the mental side of the game can still throw you off. And I think that's what makes it so interesting. And I know I go back to what you said earlier about just the way that you approach things mentally and how you valued efficiency, and you didn't want to be, I didn't want to get 30 if it was going to take me 22 shots to get there. And everybody's mentality is different. And so when you're having those conversations as a coach, one of the things that it comes across very clearly is you have to know which buttons to push. When you were talking about the psychology, you have to know which buttons to push with which players, I'm sure.
Absolutely. Like as a college player, I took opportunities, like literally I probably could have scored 60 points a game because I was at the NAIA level. But like I averaged over 30 points my whole career. But if we were playing a team where I could score 5 points and win, I scored what I needed to score to win. And then I just coasted and let my team have their name in the paper and let them have their nights to shine. Then I think the highest, I scored 67 points in the game, and nobody said a word to me because I was such an unselfish. I needed to score 67 for us to win. We won the game by 1 point in 4 overtimes. And I had 0 turnovers. That was the best stat of the game. But the girls were okay with me doing that because of the psychology of how I trained them. They trusted me because they knew at moments that I was going to give them their time. I wasn't trying to hog all the attention. But I think that you learn that. And then LeBron, he's a great example. Michael, Kobe, great leaders learn how to push buttons and how to get the best out of their teammates and players. And you know what position, you know when you can yell at them. Sue Bird is amazing at it. Can't nobody yell at Breanna Stewart but Sue Bird. Sue Bird will yell at her like she's her ugly stepchild. And Breanna will respond with yes, with no, but that's because the amount of respect that she has for Sue. And I just think that you're right about a lot of the things that you're saying. And I really don't think it's rocket science, but you know, we all get caught up and we want what's best for our kids. We want our kids to be successful. We want them to see all the good things in life. But the only problem about that is that probably 97% of lessons are learned through failure. So if everything only happens good to you, when failure does happen, it's devastating. That's why you get these 25, 24-year-olds that just can't handle little bitty problems because their parents handled it for so long for them. So that's one of the reasons I can tell you that I'm so thankful for my childhood. I learned, I had to become emotionally intelligent really fast, but I learned how to problem solve and how to deal with problems. And I think that that's helped me navigate life a lot.
I agree with you 100% that one of the biggest challenges I think we face as a society is that old adage of you shouldn't be clearing the path for the child. You know, you got to let the child clear that path for themselves and figure it out and fall down sometimes and get back up, and don't always be there to smooth things out for them. They have to be able to handle things. And that goes not just with basketball and sports, but that's school, that's life, that's the workplace, everything. And as parents, you understand parents' desire to make things easy on their kids. But I think, as you said, in the long run, you're not accomplishing anything. And I think about my experience as a player, and I never, ever remember having a conversation with my parents about like me coming home from a practice or me calling them from college about a practice or a game or something and complaining about something that a coach said or did, or it was too tough or this or that. I just learned to figure it out. And that's not to say that there weren't times that I disagreed with decisions that coaches made or that things weren't really, really difficult, but you just learned to figure it out. And I didn't rely on parents the same way that other people would have. And, I think to a lot of situations that people have today, and you mentioned it, where you have to wait your turn, and you see so many people who are not willing to wait their turn. When you're transitioning from high school basketball to college basketball, unless you are really, really, really good, your odds of coming in as a freshman and being an impact player at the college level are pretty small. I mean, most freshmen don't play a whole lot and have to pay their dues and have to wait their turn. And I was certainly that player. I maybe played 5 or 6 minutes a game when I was a freshman. And that year was tough because it's hard to go through all the grind of practice and the work and the adjustment and then not get that reward in a game, especially when you're used to being a big fish and kind of getting to do what you want out on the floor. And that's an adjustment. And so often, I mean, all you have to do is look at the transfer portal in college basketball today to see the number of people that they don't stick around and fight through it. What do? They're like, they blame somebody else. It's the coach's fault, or you should go somewhere else, and this coach is doing you wrong, and that kind of thing. And you find that very few people are willing to wait it out. And I think that that's something that we struggle with today. And I think you make a great point about learning how to fail.
Yeah. And also too, I think that this is something that, like I said, learning your kids' level, because I mean, even in the pros, you can be a great player in the wrong system. And I think that so many people just pick things because of bells and whistles and the way they look. But does that system fit your kid? Is it a system where they shoot a lot of threes? Is your kid a three-point shooter? I'm just using small examples. Is it the dribble drive system? And you know what the dribble drive looks for. Is it a Princeton system? Is your kid a smart thinker that'll fit that? You have to learn what your kid fits and then find systems that your kid can shine in. Because all players don't fit all systems and vice versa. So, if your kids, if you're playing on an organization that they press a lot and you have a slow kid that's a really good shooter, they're probably not going to play that much.
Absolutely.
So don't sit on the bench. Like those are things that parents have to figure out about their kids if they really want their kid to shine and excel. But then at the same point, they have to accept the results of what they see and what their kid puts on the court.
All right. What kind of players fit into 6-on-6?
Man, all kinds of players. You can be overweight. Because you can always rest. All you got to do is get the ball to the line and rest. So that 6-on-6 was great for women for a long time, just because so many different kind of girls can play. You didn't have to be in great shape to be a great 6-on-6 player because you had so much time to rest. But I think that's something that I did fundamentally. I became probably the best that I could be because, my coach took me to a lot of camps in the summer and we just dribbled. Like very seldom that we play basketball games. It was just fundamentals.
I think that is one of the keys to developing early is to get a good fundamental base underneath you. And then once you do that, then you can obviously start to branch out and to play and to get, it makes it so much better when you have a fundamental base underneath you and then you can build off of that.
Well, and it's funny just to say that I used to give this kid lessons, and for about 2 weeks we were working on several different things, and he was actually in season. And when he comes to a lesson and his mom is like, y'all been doing this for 2 weeks. Why are y'all still doing it? I'm like, he still can't do it in live play. So do you just want me to teach him how to do drills where he looks good when he's just out here by himself? Or do you want him to actually know how to use the move? Like, those things make me so angry. Like I had to actually stop training kids because parents want you to quick fix their kids. Like if your kid ain't good at this, it's my job to teach him how to do it. And I don't like teaching someone something and moving on and he can't execute the move in a game because the moves, I can teach you moves all day, but do they translate? Can the kid take the moves that we're using and use them in live play? And I think parents can go watch their kids at the workout and be like, ooh, you're doing such a great job with him. But can he do it in live play, or he or she?
Yeah,
and
I
that's
think
what
that
it boils down to.
I agree.
Hey, coaches, parents, and group leaders. I want to introduce you to our newest sponsor, SnapRaise. SnapRaise is the nation's largest digital donation platform built to help teams, youth groups, and clubs raise money quickly and efficiently without selling products. SnapRaise builds your group a customizable campaign website, and students use their mobile devices to connect and engage with their biggest fans. My son's high school team used SnapRaise this season, and our team raised all the money they needed to fund their season, and then some. Getting SnapRaise started is quick and free. Just visit snapraise.com and you'll get connected to a local SnapRaise expert in no time.
I think that's one of the challenges people that I've talked to that train, and I know when I'm not doing as much training now as I used to, but one of the things that when I was doing it, when I talked to other trainers, is when the parent comes and they sit and watch, you feel somewhat of an obligation to be, I'm going to use the word creative, and come up with new and different things that maybe prove to the parent that, hey, I'm doing some stuff with them, as opposed to what would really be effective and efficient is you figure out what the kid does in a game, especially if we're talking about like a high school player. What do they do in the game? What do they need to get better at? So I have a conversation with their high school coach. This is what I'm going to need this kid to do. And so you work on that. And that's not to say you're not going to continue to try to expand their game and have them work on new skills, but certainly you want them to be able to do things better, as you said, in a game. And so that makes a huge difference, where the repetitive nature of it, if you're doing the same drill with the kid for, let's say you're working with them 2 or 3 times a week, and you've done that for a month, and the parent comes after that month is over and said, well, all you did was work on these 2 things with them. And your response again would be, hey, they have to master this in order to be able to do it under game conditions. And yet parents don't always understand that, and kids don't always have the patience and the discipline to do the old Kobe thing where I'm just working on basic footwork over and over again, even though I'm the best player in the world.
Yeah, well, that's exactly why I quit training kids, because I don't want to babysit people's kids. If I'm training, I want to train high-level athletes that we're going to really get in there. And high-level players don't want to move on until they master it. So, and to me as a coach, that's how, when I train in your kid, how they're acting and how they're interacting with me tells me how much they want to be here and how good they want to be. If I give you an hour lesson and you want to take 5 breaks in that hour, then you're telling me everything that your high school coach says about you. If you understand what I'm saying?
I know exactly what you're saying.
And I don't. I actually trained a kid. His dad was a high level politician. He didn't want to do anything. If we had an hour workout, literally, I might get 30 minutes of work out of him. I got tired of begging him. I'm not giving him private lessons to yell at him. So I actually gave them their money back and said, I'm going to be judged on the results. I don't want to be judged on the results when he doesn't want to work. So, and then you have those situations, then the parents will be mad. If he doesn't get to play and he doesn't look any better, they spent all that money with me. So I'm very honest with parents in that light. I can only make you, as a trainer, not me, you, any trainer can only help a kid to their level and to the level of hard work they put into their game. I can't make them better. Their hard work is what's going to make them better.
And that absolutely goes back to what we said earlier about telling people the truth. Like,
yeah,
as a trainer, I mean, we know that those people are out there that if you want to hide the truth from players and you want to collect your $50 an hour or your $75 an hour or whatever it is, there's plenty of people who are willing to pay you that and again, take 30 minutes of breaks during a 1 hour workout. Those people are out there. And it goes back to, if you're really going to get results and have success as a coach, whether that's as a trainer, whether that's as a high school coach, whether that's as a professional coach, it all boils down to, you have to be able to tell players the truth. And when you do, then you can get the most out of them, because now we have a relationship. We have something that we both, the player may not always agree with you when you tell them the truth, but at least you have a starting point of, look, here's where we are right now, and here's where we need to get to. And when you don't have that, when you're just kind of sugarcoating it and telling people what they want to hear, you end up painting yourself into a corner that leaves you in a lot of difficult situations, what I've found over the course of my career, both in mistakes that I've made and in things I've seen other coaches do.
I agree with that. That's a very, very, very true statement. Coaching is just, and I think that, and it's so interesting to me, and I don't think I've ever had this conversation with somebody, but, for me, my coaches were everything. My high school coach meant a lot to me, affected my life greatly in one way. My college coach was the same way. And now it's just so many coaches that's coaching for money. Like, it's changed the game so much, because I'm telling you, the most impactful person on most athletes' life, I mean, you could probably, most of them would say their coach, one of their coaches in some way, shape, form, or fashion. But now when you're coaching, like all these outside coaches that really don't even have any basketball knowledge, I won't say, they're coming into coaching, and they're coaching to make money. It's a completely different athlete you're building at that point in time, to me.
It's definitely a business on the youth side of basketball. Go back to, you talked about your experience and there only being 1 or 2 elite AAU teams, and that was it. Well, that's not a business model. Nobody was making money off of you playing AAU basketball or me playing AAU basketball. That was not what it was there for. And now that is what it's there for in a lot of cases. And look, I don't begrudge anybody the right to earn a living as a basketball coach or as a basketball business, because I've had a basketball business for 29 years. But by the same token, I think you have to kind of understand what it is that you're doing and what you're trying to, and how you're trying to impact the people around you. And you can find your niche and have an impact. You don't have to be a trainer of just elite players. Some people's niche is to work with, like for me, my basketball camps, I work with kids who are in grades 1 through 6. And as my camp has gone on, I would say, generally speaking, probably the level of talent in the camp has probably gone down, just as the basketball world has kind of skewed away from the camp model. But I also, just like we've talked about, is I understand what the people who are coming to me for those camps, I understand what they're trying to get out of it. And so I make sure that I provide what it is that those people are trying to get out of it. And I just think that there's a lot of people out there that, as you said, are in it not to have an impact positively and use the game to make that impact, but they're just out to make some money running a basketball.
And also, too, I mean, I see plenty of guys in the game that may not even be great coaches, but they're coaching inner city kids, or they're giving kids a reason to be off the streets.
Right.
They're giving them hope. They're giving them a different direction. They're giving them, and there's lots of teams like that. Like, I just think that these teams serve so many different areas. It's just about finding out which one best suits you and your family.
Absolutely.
So they can get the most out of it, and you're not spending, $8,000 or $9,000 a summer wasting your time on some things and your kid's not getting the most out of it. But
yeah, and it's difficult. Like I said, I think that parental education piece of it is really, really hard, because in most cases, parents don't have experience with it, so they don't really know where to turn. And if they turn in the wrong direction and get connected to somebody who kind of leads them astray, you can end up having a bad experience with the game instead of what should be a positive experience, regardless of what your ultimate goal is in the game. Your goal as a 8 or 9 year old might just be to play and have fun with your friends. And then there's somebody else who's 8, 9, 10 years old, who's already focused and has some level of talent and is ready to take the game more seriously. So you have to be able to find the situation that's right for you. And when you do, you're going to end up with a good experience. And when you don't, unfortunately, it can go in a different direction. So one of the things that I always hope for youth basketball is that we have more people that get into it for the right reasons to try to impact kids in a positive way. And I think we have the vast majority of people, I think, are in it for the right reasons. And Jason can attest to this, but on the podcast, one of the things that's so enjoyable for me and for him is having our guests on is just the passion and enthusiasm that people have for the game and sharing and being willing to share their knowledge with other coaches to be able to ultimately impact the game of basketball and impact the kids who play it in a positive direction. And we hear that from so many people, and it's so great to hear, because it's just, to me, that's what it's all about.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And, still too, with the climate in the world today, sports is still one of the few places where, it don't matter about anything. It's just a good athlete against a good athlete. And the end results is there's usually going to be some respect at the end, regardless of who wins and who loses. So sports just teaches so many things to kids: tolerance, teamwork, and I can't even imagine our society without it. But it's just sports has just changed, over the millennia. It's funny for my nephew Jackson, who's, like I said, a freshman at Texas A&M. Basketball is so much different from just when I was a freshman, and adjusting into the curves and the terms of how the scope of basketball has changed over the years is really a big job, and you're talking about parents. I wish that there was a place, a great place. Not the NCAA gives you some things, but just a great place for parents to be able to get this kind of knowledge that they need. And it would be nice if maybe EYBL tournaments or something like that would put on seminars, something for parents to be able to find a way to put their kids in the best situations possible. Because regardless of anything, whether they go on to be a professional athlete, being a part of sports is going to help them be better in whatever they decide to do in their life.
Agree, 100%. All right, I want to ask you, what's your favorite moment as a basketball player from any level that you played at? If I ask you for your favorite moment, what is it?
I'll tell you my favorite moment probably was when Theresa Weatherspoon made the shot, heard around the world. I think it won ESPN's Play of the Year. But anyway, she made a shot from the free throw line of one end of the court at the other in the WNBA finals in the second game against the Houston Rockets. It was the best and the worst moment of my life, in the fact that I had scored 21 straight points before Spoon shot that shot. She made that shot, and everyone forgot I scored 21 straight points against Cheryl Swoops. No one said anything about that. The shot took everything. So it was probably the most memorable and the best and the worst time of my life. But I'll never forget that shot. It was amazing.
I can honestly say, Crystal, that memory that you just shared right there doesn't surprise me in the least based on our conversation, in that it involves you having tremendous success, but it also involves someone else having tremendous success. And based on our conversation, I'm not surprised at all. I don't know how you made that happen and how you made that be your favorite memory, but I am not surprised that's how it worked out. Did you always know you wanted to be a coach while you were playing? Was that something that was always in your mind?
I tell people all the time that I feel so blessed and fortunate, because very few people have the opportunity to, as a third grader, say, I want to be this one day, and actually get to do it. Usually life takes you in directions and turns and ups and downs, and most people get off that path. But yes, I was able to actually do exactly what I said I wanted to do, and I just feel blessed and fortunate to be able to, lucky actually, to be able to do all of that.
When you first started coaching, was it love at first sight with coaching? Was it everything that you expected it to be? Was there something different? Just what was your initial reaction to coaching? Were you like immediately, oh, this is it, I love it? Or was there some part of it that maybe you're like, oh, this is surprising, I got to kind of get used to this?
Yeah, definitely was some things to figure out, and just figuring out about how to get the best out of people. But absolutely, I'm a problem solver. And to me, to be able to convince people to do the things you want them to do and to play together, to me, that is like one of the ultimate things. When you can align something and get people to work together in a certain way to achieve a certain thing flawlessly and enjoy doing it, then you're doing some pretty good leading. So I absolutely love the challenge of being a coach. And, and then it's the challenge of learning how to navigate. In coaching, you can't always make people happy. Sometimes you have to disappoint some of the players that you actually love the most, and value the most. But I always wanted to be a coach, and, it'll probably always be in me. I have since resigned from coaching, but I just feel like now I have a better opportunity to impact basketball in a different perspective, because I think a lot of things we're talking about in girls basketball is just the fact that professional sports is so young. Like, as a young player, I looked up to Michael Jordan, but that was really unrealistic. Like, I was a good basketball player, but I was never going to be Michael Jordan. Now young girls have the ability to look at other athletes and say, hey, I have the ability to do that. There was no WNBA. Now there is. So I think that there's just a learning curve there and a growth that girls are going through. I think that you're seeing it change now, because can't tell you how many sophomores in high school and different players I see dunking girls. It's just evolving and becoming easier.
And how important is it too for young female players to see women coaches? Because we know that in the game, especially at the younger ages, like you go and watch a 3rd, 4th, 5th grade girls AAU tournament, and I don't know what the percentage is, but it's awfully high of those coaches are mostly dads and they're not moms. And to me, when I look at the next step for women's sports, it's really developing that pipeline of players becoming coaches. And I think them being able to see and have role models of women in coaching, to me, is something that's really, really important. So how do you view that particular aspect of it?
I mean, that's a whole can of worms and almost a whole different show. But I think that you see EYBL, you see all that emulate coaching in women's basketball in general. I mean, when you really look at it, there's not, I'm going to say there is a lot, but overall in women's basketball, there's a high number of men that coach it. But when you look at men's basketball, there's not a high number of women coaching it. We don't have the opportunity just to go be in that realm. So I think that it has to start, in the pros and in college, they have to start hiring more women. And it's just kind of how society works. I'm unfortunately, it's been a long time breaking these walls down. And I think that, coaches are just they're going to have to start taking more chances on women. And that's just about, male athletic directors being comfortable with hiring female coaches. And, I think that that's a bridge that has to be gapped. And just, coaching at all different levels. Being in different coaches associations and knowing what coaches fight for and what they go through. That's a big discussion in women's basketball right now, and a big fight that they want to see more female head coaches.
Do you think that's because a lot of the decision makers are still sort of, I'll use the term old boy network? Do you still think that that's a piece of it? Is that the people who are making those power decisions are not necessarily comfortable hiring female coaches?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad that we just got on that subject. I just told you that I'm a former assistant coach of the Dallas Wings. I was there for 2.5 years, and Brian Agler, who was the head coach, resigned. I kept that team together. Those girls, I absolutely had a great relationship with all of them, and really had been led to believe that I was going to get that head coaching job and had a really good shot at it. He ends up hiring a girl that I played with in the WNBA named Vicki Johnson. Me and Vicki had been best friends for a long period of time. We played together. She started the 2, I started the 3. And I told him, if you're going to hire another head coach, I'm going to resign, because I'm done being an assistant coach. All you do is deal with all the problems and you're stressed out and you do all the work. And I told him I was done being an assistant coach. Now, he calls me and tells me he's going to hire VJ. And I told him, well, congratulations. I wish you guys luck, but I'm resigning. And he basically got mad at me. But I didn't resign because I was angry. I resigned because I have the heartbeat of that team. Most of those girls on that team follow me, do whatever I say. If VJ doesn't have success and I'm in the middle and I didn't get hired for that job, every coach in the country is going to look at me like I did something to sabotage her.
Right.
And you know that is a number. If you ever want to be in coaching, loyalty is everything.
Absolutely.
So I thought it was emotionally intelligent for me to remove myself from that situation, because I hope she's successful. I want her to be successful, but no one will ever be able to say she's unsuccessful because of Crystal Robinson. I'm not that kind of person. I don't have that kind of character, but she's been a head coach in this league before, and it was not very good. So no one's going to put that on me. So I ended up resigning. So I think that I have the ability to bring some focus to basketball in different areas now. Don't know if I will get back into coaching. It's been very, very good to me, but I don't know if I hit that 40-year-old change or whatever. It kind of all my friends that's older than me keep telling me everybody changes when they hit 45. They just want to do something different and they feel unfulfilled. So I don't know, but I'm really happy with the direction that my life's going and the book and all that. So.
All right. Well, that's a perfect segue. Let's jump into the book. Tell us a little bit about the why behind now being the time that you wanted to write it, and give us the little elevator pitch for why people should read the book and what they're going to get out of it when they do. Okay.
Well, actually, I wrote the book over 12 years ago. I've had it. I just have not released it, and I just wanted to wait for the right time. It's a kind of a no holds barred. It opens my life up and my family's life up to a lot of things, from, molestation to, it's not a book about, if you think you're going to read it and it's going to be about basketball statistics, it has stuff about basketball in it, but it really is a lot about me and understanding. And it's written that way because I think there are thousands of girls out there just like me that have feelings just like I had, that were lost, that I'm saying, hey, you're not alone. Look where I made it. I had those same feelings and you can too. So that's really why I wrote the book. And I was kind of convinced that it was time to put it out, because I really do think it can help a lot of people not feel alone and not be ashamed. I think so many people that come from poor situations or, those kind of backgrounds, like your circumstances don't determine who you're going to become. It's not embarrassing because I'm not embarrassed because my family didn't have a lot. Actually, it made me a better person. It made me stronger. It made me a lot more things. But I think I put the book out because I think there's a lot of people who can relate to it. And when you pick it up to read it, you will definitely laugh in places. You will definitely cry real tears in places. And I think that it done really well in the beta readings. And I think that most people can take something away from that they would relate to. So.
Where can people find out more about the book? Where can they pre-order it?
It is going to be able to be open for pre-order and next Monday on Amazon.com. You'll be able to pre-order it then.
Awesome. I am looking forward to, after our conversation, I'm looking forward to the opportunity to read it. I think that just from what you and I have talked about tonight, I feel like we've gone, you said when we talked pre-podcast that we were going to look up and be amazed by the amount of time that had gone by. And I can honestly say that that's true. And I feel like we left so much on the table in terms of things that we could talk about and getting into specifics of the different coaching stops that you had along the way and your playing career. And yet at the same time, we've talked for nearly an hour and a half. And it's just been, I think, a tremendous conversation that has enlightened me about your journey and about some of the things that we've been able to talk about. So before we wrap up, I want to give you a chance to share with people, where can they connect with you, whether that's sharing social media, website. Again, give us the title of the book, and then I'll jump back in and wrap things up.
Okay. My book's called Finding Myself, and it can be bought on Amazon.com, pre-ordered starting Monday. Also too, I can't remember what else you just asked me to tell them.
Social media. Where can people connect with you?
You can find me at Robber3, ROBBER3 on Instagram. That's about all I do. If I get too many social media platforms, I probably won't get anything done. So,
I know about that. We're trying to manage all that stuff. Is crazy.
Yes, it really is. So that'd be the best place to connect with me at, and there'll be lots of information about the book there.
Crystal, I personally cannot thank you enough for taking the time out of your schedule to jump on with us here tonight and share your story and talk a little hoops with us. It's been a lot of fun to get to know you, to get to know a little bit about your background, to find out more about the book. And I'm sure our audience feels the same way. So again, I personally want to say thanks to you for jumping on with us. And to everyone out there, we appreciate you listening, and we will catch you on our next episode. Thanks.
Thanks for listening to the Hoop Heads podcast, presented by Head Start Basketball.